That was my popcorn. Okay, so you own a building, a business, whatever. You need to evacuate in an emergency, but not really sure how to. You need fire wardens, you need fire marshals, you don't know who they are, what's the difference, how many you need. We're going to talk about that in this video. Let's go. What's up guys, welcome back to Rebranding Safety. Rebranding Safety is the YouTube and podcast channel translating health and safety to help you save lives and save money. We basically do what we say on the tin. We rebrand health and safety. We're challenging perception, we're making it simple to help you. In this video we're going to talk about fire warden procedures or fire marshal procedures, whatever we want to call them, doesn't really matter. We're going to cover how I would do it for most properties, but worth noting that it's going to change for so many different businesses. One thing to note, you're probably going to note the quality of this intro and the outro is going to be extremely different from the quality of the content, because we recorded the content before we brought the new camera you're watching this video on. I apologize for that. Anyway, let's get into the video. Okay, so why do we have a fire warden then? Two reasons, proactive and reactive. Everyone knows about the reactive, so we'll cover that in a second, but proactive, let's talk about that first. A lot of people forget about this. Proactive is where you're kind of allocating this person as a fire warden role, primarily in a reactive role, but it's also an awesome way to allocate a proactive way of managing fire safety to one person. Now, it should, and it is important that it should be everybody, but you can have this one person to be a bit more extra vigilant per se. So going around, and if you've got a roll call system, which we'll explain, making sure that that's working. If you've got a sweep system, making sure that everything for that is in place. Going around hazard spotting if need be, checking housekeeping, things like that. If you've got designated places or equipment, making sure they're in place, checking extinguishers. You could have somebody allocated to do that. And if you've got a big building, you'll have several wardens, you could allocate them the roles for different areas. So it's important to think that this is a proactive role and a reactive role. So reactive then, let's think about what we do here. This is the stuff that everybody knows, but why do we have it? Well, the first things first is we need to try and reduce incorrect call outs to the fire service. If we're calling the fire service to site because they think it's a fire and it's not, and that keeps happening, they can actually charge us. We can actively reduce that by having a very robust warden system in place. But the most important point is that it is your responsibility to get everybody that you invite into your buildings out of your buildings, not the fire service. Everybody thinks the fire service is there to rescue them. If you think about it, you're going to have, say, a big shop, for example. You could have anything from 20 to 100 people in this shop at any one time. Fire service is 4 people, if you're lucky. 4 people to come and rescue everybody. It's not going to happen. So it's your responsibility. And then finally, worst case scenario, it is a fire. The fire service turn up. You need to have somebody to inform the fire service what the problem is, what the situation is. Are there people there? Is it just a fire? Is it a small fire? Is it a large fire? Where is the fire? I've worked with quite a few people who are firefighters or who have been firefighters, and all of them consistently say, all we want to know is where they are, where the fire is, and if we need to rescue people. But the other important point is here is to be honest. If you're not sure, say you're not sure. A lot of us don't really have a good grasp on our evacuation procedures. That's just how it is at the moment, unfortunately. Hopefully you'll change after this video. But if you're not sure, say you're not sure. The fire service turn up, you're here, where's the fire? Fire's there. Is everybody out of the building? I don't know. Be honest. Then they can react accordingly. So who can be a fire warden? In a nutshell, anyone. Anyone of a reasonable level of understanding of the building and how the building reacts, which you can tell them as the responsible person. The important thing is that they know how that stuff works. You might need to provide them a Toolbox talk or some training, but anyone can do this. It's actually really simple. When we think about it, we think about these massive fires. We think that the building's going to spontaneously combust and it's going to be this crazy situation. You can train for this stuff, and unfortunately it'll never be like the real thing. But the slicker your system is, And the more people know about who does what is important. So who can do it? Anyone. How do we train them? Internally, in my opinion, what do they need to know? They need to know how the alarms work, how it reacts. You might have multiple sounding alarms, you might just have one sound alarm. What is the evacuation style? If you're having fire wardens, you're most likely a full evacuation or a phased evacuation. So think about the alarms, how does it work? Who have you got in your building, things like that. That's the stuff we need to know. A lot of this you'd have probably covered in your fire risk assessment, so you'll have a really good source of information of that. So this can be real simply managed internally with reasonably competent people. Let's briefly touch on something that comes up quite a lot in my experience. Are they called wardens, or are they called marshals, or fire reps, or fire buddies, or whatever we want to call them? If we're brutally honest, it really doesn't matter. There is no difference between a marshal and a warden unless you create a difference. Now, it's fine that you might have a marshal that does this job and a warden that does this job. That's fine. You might have a lead warden that does this job and a warden that does that job. It doesn't matter. The key thing is that you know and the people doing the job know. So the wardens know what they must do and the lead wardens know what they must do. And they know what the other is doing. So that everyone knows, boom, I've got to do this, I'll do this, boom, go out, there I go, done. That's the most important thing. Okay, so let's break down the procedure then. So I like to break down the procedure of what you do in the event of an emergency into 3 simple sections: the panel, the evacuation, and the fire service. Now, it's worth noting that it's likely that the panel and the evacuation are going to be happening simultaneously. It's also worth noting that what I'm doing here is not a one size fits all. This is just a simple example of the 3 main tasks that you need to do. This can vary on the size of your building, how many people, who you've got in the building, etc, etc. But these are the fundamentals of what you require. So let's break down the panel then. The first thing, the alarm goes off. We need to go to the panel. So one person needs to go to the panel, and normally I call this person a lead warden, right? And we're assuming here it's quite a big building. So the lead warden's going to go to the fire alarm panel. You can see here we've got this really bespoke, beautifully designed fire alarm panel. We're going to go to the fire alarm panel. We can see 9 times out of 10 you're going to have a flashing light. Even the older ones are going to have this. You're going to have this flashing light that says fire. So there'll be fire next to it. So it's telling you straight away there's a fire. You might have an addressable system, so what this means is each detector head has been addressed, it's given a name and a title, so that might say room 1. But to be honest, the main point is, it says fire, and we've got the zones. So we're breaking down our building into zones. So here we've got 3 zones. This is our building, really complicated. Zone 1, zone 2, zone 3. We can see the fire is in zone 3, so we're going to go fire's in zone 3. What do we do now? To reduce those false call-outs we mentioned earlier and the potential charges, we need to do something that everyone doesn't really feel comfortable with. We need to go towards the potential fire. I'm going to come to the panel, I'm going to see there's a fire, the fire's in zone 3, I'm going to make my way towards zone 3. What I'm looking for is signs of fire. I'm looking for smoke, flames, heat, anything like that. I'm going to slowly and calmly make my way towards there. The minute I see smoke, I feel heat getting real hot in here, or I see flames, I'm out of the building. By the nearest exit, I'm out of the building, I'm calling the fire service. Another thing to note, if you're requesting this role specifically, which I normally do, to call the fire service, make sure they've got means to call the fire service. Do they have a mobile phone? Is there a phone outside? So you need to think about that. I remember eating dinner in a restaurant, with European safety team it was. We went to this restaurant near me, and the fire action notice, which tells you what to do, said leave the building, call the fire service. Phone to call the fire service is located on reception, so we had to come back in the building to call the fire service, which we all thought was quite funny because we're sad. Anyway, so that's what we need to do. So we need to go towards the fire slowly, calmly. The minute we don't feel comfortable because we see smoke, we see heat, we see fire, we evacuate, we call the fire service. It's a confirmed fire. This will reduce your potential of charges, reduce bringing the fire service to the building when they don't need to, which nobody wants. So why might it be a false alarm, and what do you do if there is a false alarm? You might be making your way all the way to zone 3. If it's an addressable system, you might even know what specific room it is, but you're going to go to zone 3. and you might find out actually somebody just burnt the toast. It might find out that you've got a faulty detector head. You need to call your contractor that repairs your alarm system. But you can go to the building, you keep going, you keep feeling safe because there's no smoke, there's no heat, there's no fire. You're going to keep going until you confirm there is no fire. Okay, so evacuation then. Remember, this is probably going to be happening simultaneously with the previously mentioned panel role. So there's one person already trying to investigate the fire, but all the wardens must assume it's a fire. That's extremely important. If we think, oh, there was a false alarm next week, or we haven't had a drill in a while, so we'll just take it easy, you need to assume it's a fire. So all the wardens react straight away. Off we go. Now what the wardens are doing here is evacuating the building. So they're doing all of this to be able to confirm what they need to confirm in the next step, which is the fire service. So we need to get everyone out of the building. There are two ways to do this, or two ways that I like to think we can do this. There's the most popular, roll call. In my opinion, this is extremely difficult to manage, quite old-fashioned, and frankly doesn't really work in the world of agile working and hot desking, etc, etc. I find this really, really hard to manage. That doesn't mean it won't work for you, so let's break it down. There's several ways to do this. The easier and most common way is a visitor book and a staff book. You need to do both. If you're going to have people sign in, you need to get them to sign in. Another way to do things, people like to use cards or clock-in cards or something like that. In a place where you're managing and you're aware of your staff and you're kind of closed and you know when people are coming and going, and that's fine. People come in, they're going to take the card, they're going to clock in, and they're going to slot it into a board. The alarm goes off, somebody is allocated, so maybe the lead warden is allocated to do their job, and then come get this board, go outside and stand with the board. Take all the cards out. James MacPherson, yes. Sherry MacPherson, yes. And you go through it, and then you work out, by the time the fire service come out, you've worked out who's in the building, who's not in the building. So you can say, these cards are left, we have to assume they're in the building. You can do that with a visitor book, you can do that however you want. Remember, I find this extremely difficult to manage. Think about it. When do you ever sign out when you go for a lunch? Regardless if you're going for a lunch break, a lunch walk, could be anything. Not a lot of people sign out. Very, very difficult to manage. So fire service turn up and you go, I'm not sure. One, think how bad you're going to feel. You don't know if somebody's in your building on fire. And two, it completely changes the game for the fire service. Which is why I think a sweep is a much better way to manage this. So remember, we've got the lead warden going around the building and they're confirming the fire, contacting the fire service. So all these people have got to think about, we've got Warden 1 and Warden 2. I'm Warden 1, I'm going to evacuate Zone 1. Let's say I work in this office and that's why I've been allocated Zone 1. So I'm going to come out of my office and then I'm going to work up into the next office. I'm going to go in there, I'm going to realise David's in there. He thinks, I don't take anything seriously. So I'm going to say, right David, you're going to come with me. You're not going to go off on your own and evacuate, you're going to stay with me. Then I'm going to come back out and go up into the other room. There's no one there. Great. Me and David then going to make our way out the building to the assembly point. Car park could be anywhere. As long as it's somewhere reasonably safe, doesn't matter. We're going to go out. Then this is where the lead warden role, the panel person, comes back into action. And we'll talk about that more in the next point. Okay, so the final section, the fire service. The fire service have turned up at your building. You've done the panel roll, you've confirmed it is an actual fire, you've contacted the fire service, you've done your roll call, or you've swept the building, you've evacuated the building, fire service have arrived. If you've got a roll call system, quite simple. Go through your roll call system, you know Bob's missing, and you say to the fire service, there may be someone in the building, Bob works in this office. You might have a floor plan or something like that. You might have the zone plan that we talked about earlier. And you say, Bob's out, this is his office, the fire's here. Off you go. The fire service now know where they are, where the fire service is, and that there is potentially somebody in the building, and that where that person may be. They can now act accordingly. The sweep system is essentially exactly the same, but we're not going off a roll call, we're basically sweeping the areas. Now some people for large buildings can find this quite complicated. If you've got several zones, several areas, how do you keep track of that? There are several ways you could do this. I've implemented in an old place I used to work, wooden paddles, so we had different coloured zones. So we had red zone, green zone, blah blah blah, and we had 3 wardens for that area, and they would go and grab that paddle. If the paddle is gone, that means the other warden has got it and is sweeping the area, so they just then become a normal person evacuating the building. If the paddle is there, they assume the role of warden and they sweep the area that they've been told to. They then take the paddle outside and go to the warden, the lead warden, so normally the person doing the panel role, and say, here's the paddle, everybody's out. All then that lead warden needs to do is collect red, green and yellow. They know the building is empty. Now if you've got much larger buildings, you might want to put together something like this. This is just something knocked together by an old colleague of mine, which is an awesome system. So we might have zones along here, excuse the rattling of these, and this would be empty because this, for example, this baton or whatever would sit in the area that needs to be swept. So it would sit in zone 1 if this said zone 1, for example. It would sit in zone 1. I would go to that as zone 1's warden, pick this up, sweep the area and make my way outside and confirm the area is empty by giving this to the lead warden. Simple. So if you've got loads and loads of different areas, you might want to put together something like this. If you're only good with woodwork, like my old colleague was, you could do this at home in your garage. Simple stuff. You don't need to buy these crazy systems. The paddle system, we had about, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think we had 6 different zones, and that paddle system worked quite well. Where they were just pieces of wood, varnished, I think, painted, hole in them so people could hold them, and we could hook them on the wall, and that's it. Simple, simple, simple. So something like that. The key thing we're trying to achieve here is when the fire service turn up, we communicate to them where the fire is, if there's anyone in the building, where they are in relation to the building and the fire. One final thing then, it's really important that the fire service have one person to talk to, and that for me is that lead warden role, that person that goes to the panel and evacuates the building. Now these are just one way of doing it. You can come up with any crazy way of doing it. These are just some tips, but it's important that the fire service have one point of contact. It just creates a much calmer environment. If you can imagine you had 50 wardens and 50 people going up to the fire service saying, oh, this has been swept, that's not been swept, etc. If those wardens are coming to a person they know, the lead warden, and that warden is then going to the fire service and clearly communicating the issue, it makes it a much more slicker process. So try and get one person talking to the fire service. Okay guys, thanks for watching. That was Fire Warden's procedures, Fire Marshal's procedures, doesn't matter, whatever you decide to call them. I hope you found this useful. If you have, hit the like button, but also drop me a comment below. What kind of business are you thinking about getting your Fire Warden procedures in? Are you watching this because it's something new, you thought, shit, we haven't got any Fire Wardens, or you want to tweak the way you do it, you're reviewing it? Let me know below. I'd be really interested to know why you're watching this video. Don't forget to check out our podcast as well. There is loads and loads of interesting in-depth conversations on there as well. Just Google Rebranding Safety Podcast. It will come up. It's on all of the most popular platforms and even the non-popular platforms as well. So don't forget to subscribe to that. If you enjoyed this video, hit subscribe and the bell so you never miss another episode. I'll see you in the next video. Safe.